Hey there, guys. Up on my roof here. Wanted to come check in with you and talk to you a little bit about some of what I've been learning and thinking about. But first of all, just wanting to remind you, as I've been reminding myself too, that we're all still going through something right now, right? With being in this pandemic and being separated from so many people that we love, having so much that's uncertain and even challenging going on. So it really is true that more than ever, just taking care of ourselves one day at a time and just honoring as various feelings come through about that, right? Because it is an interesting time. And yes, though, can be a time perhaps for growth and reflection and redirection, even, right? And some of what I've been doing is doing this conversation series with different people that I've been wanting to hear from, talk to, get into conversation with about conscious relationships and conscious relationship. And really, each conversation I've learned so much. It's been so appropriate to my life and my growth, and really just coming from my desire to be better, to grow, to change, to understand more how my relationship with everything is really what my life is about, right? And so, yeah, that means absolutely our relationships with ourselves, right? And I say selves like plural, maybe because we have various aspects within us, right, that we're learning to understand and make friends with and heal and deal with. And then so much of that comes up in our relationships with other people, right? And that as a place to practice some more conscious ways. And conscious just really meaning the opposite of unconscious, bringing in our awareness, our attention, our presence, and listening more is one of the big topics that keeps coming up. And really just when we're coming from this different paradigm of wanting to honor that we're all so unique, right? And even if we want to honor that we're all some aspects of the divine, that it's going to really change how we're going to be in a relationship with everything. And that if we want to see that everything is an aspect of the divine, right? Or the universe, that it just really can change how we're being, what energy we're bringing. There's been a lot of conversation about trauma, and that's a topic that's timely, and a lot of us are more aware of these days, how most of us have some sorts of trauma that we're dealing with. And even awareness is that when we are triggered by others, right, and how we might play that out, how we might act that out, that is usually a trauma response. When we're triggered, when we're reacting, responding in ways that aren't so smooth, so graceful, so pretty, right? That is part of a trauma response, right? And that helps us look at ourselves and deal with ourselves so much more lovingly. And then that we remember that with other people, that when they're acting out, when they're being a jerk, right? That we can remember that that's part of their trauma response, right? That they're coming from a place of trauma sometime in their life when they were traumatized by life, by other humans, and thus has developed fears, right? And so often a lot of our interactions, the ones that are so hard and ugly, and even the reasons why we end relationships, right, are often based around trauma responses. So just loving this more loving approach and awareness, and how much growth and possibility is here. Also, like yesterday, had a conversation with my friend Tracy about parenting relationships, and that's going to keep coming up. But this is true for any relationship, that boundaries, as much as we want to be kind and compassionate, part of being kind and compassionate is being aware of what our boundaries are and being able to express them kindly and compassionately, right? And that we're going to be a lot more kind and compassionate if we're expressing our boundaries and honoring our boundaries. So even in things like what we might call like peaceful parenting doesn't mean becoming like permissive parenting. and overextending our boundaries as parents, for instance, because that often usually is going to lead to being resentful and thus being more triggered, right? And more of those dynamics that we don't want. So yeah, I'm excited about what's coming through, how I'm learning, how I'm growing, how I'm understanding how our trauma plays a role, and how listening, really listening and being vulnerable, being candid is so helpful. And even just bringing it back to basics. I love that my friend Veronica started off the series reminding us that one of the awesome books out there that can help us go into relationship of all sorts, that's really going to cover all the bases, is that book, The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, with those 4 basic agreements we can decide, or our basic agreements with other humans in any sort of relationship. And and those are: always do your best, don't take anything personally, remember that your word is so important, so be impeccable with your word, and so it's don't make assumptions, don't take anything personally, always do your best, and be impeccable with your word. So those are some really good basics that I had already noticed could really change my life if I keep living like that. So I'm continuing to bring that into my own approaches more and more. But just remembering that it's a practice, and that how beautiful if we can see that our relationships with other people can be a place to practice, and a place to grow, and a place to heal, and a place to transform, right? Especially when we take away that judgment, when we stop labeling ourselves and others, right? That are some of those things we have been doing that can be such a disconnect, not only with how we feel with other humans, but how we feel with ourselves too, because we do that labeling and judging with ourselves, which disconnects us from ourselves more and more, right? So just interested in a more connected approach, and how that can be part of the changes that we're seeing even on the planet at this time, how we can be different about our relationships with everything, even including the planet, right? And yeah, so a lot of relationships we're in, and how can we finesse that, how can we honor that, and yeah, move into a whole new way of being with ourselves and others. That's what I'm excited about. So thanks for listening, guys. Good to have you here. Namaste.